Good evening. Here is our news newsletter, starting with the headlines. Syrian army established control over Al-Ghazal oil field in Homs inflicted heavy losses upon terrorists. Al-Jafari's some states seek to find pretext to continue their aggression on Syria. Netanyahu needs force against Palestinian attacks. Units of the army and armed forces killed many terrorists and wounded other in Jurud al-Qalamon in the countryside of Damascus. Units of the army and armed forces destroyed a number of terrorist vehicles, injuring 10 of them in Latmia, South Qastal and Kafr Zita and Salba in the Hama countryside. Three vehicles were destroyed and many terrorists were killed in military operations launched against their dens in the town of Latmia and Kafr Zita, adding that more terrorists were killed or injured in Al-Mistria village. Intensive operations on terrorist gathering left dozens of them killed and army vehicles were destroyed in the area of Al-Qastal al-Janubi, Tahmaz and Al-Qaryat. Units of the army and armed forces killed tens of terrorists in the Saraqib and Abu Zuhur in Idlib countryside. Units of the army and armed forces killed a number of terrorists, injured other and destroyed 2 vehicles equipped with the anti-aircraft machine guns in Tel Shab and Tel Asfar in the northern countryside of Al-Sweda. Units of the army and armed forces killed a number of Takfiri terrorists in Dar al-Balad and Tisya town in the Tara countryside. Continuation of the Syrian situation, the thousands of people from Babtuba neighborhood in Damascus on a Friday evening organized a candle march from Al Zaytun Church and Al Maryamiyya Church toward Babtuma Square to express condemnation of the acts of murder, displacement, and abduction committed by ISIS against civilians in Al Hasaka. The participants call on the international community to work toward the immediate and unconditional release of the abducted and deployed and to put a stop to systematic displacement of Christians in the area. They also called for supporting the Syrian Arab Army in order to restore security and stability to the entry of the country, denouncing the international silence over the crimes being committed against the Christians of the Middle East, demanding that the international community pressure that states that fund and arm terrorists who these states label moderate oppositions. Syria's permanent representative to the UN, Dr. Bashar al-Jafari, said that the interest of some countries doesn't depend on participating the needed efforts to reach a peaceful solution to the crisis led by Syria, but they resort to using all available machine guns at the UN to find a pretext to continue their aggression on Syria's sovereignty. Al-Jafari was speaking at a press statement following a UN Security Council session where it adopted a resolution condemning the use of the chlorine gas by any side of the Syria, with 14 countries voting in favor of the resolution and the abstention of Venezuela. UN resolution number 22/9 supports the resolutions of the Exclusive Council of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which call on a fact-finding mission to find its attacks on Syria, urging all parties to help and cooperate with it and threaten any parts which violate the resolution with sanctions. Interpositions of the US, Britain and France representatives at the sessions following adoption of this resolution reflected the bad intentions of those who submitted this resolution and reminds us with the gift represented to the Iraqi people that led the invasion and destruction of Iraq under the so-called weapons of the mass destruction program, Al-Jafari added. He pointed out of some attempts to foil the mission of the UN Special Envoy on Syria, Steven de Mistura. The terrorists of the so-called moderate opposition rejected his intention to freeze fighting in Aleppo, which serves the interests of some Western governments who offer weapons to them. The armed terrorist groups use their chlorine gas, Al-Jafari affirmed, adding that Syria has presented all evidence on that and call for sending a fact-finding mission to uncover the permanent, but the UN Secretary General apologized and rejected to cooperate with the Syrian government. The mission has failed on its 3 report to answer questions raised by the Exclusive Council's member states and the Syrian delegation on means to work of it. The Zionist Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that his occupation entity is determined to use all its forces to kill Palestinian assault following a Jerusalem college attack that left 5 Israelis injured. Netanyahu has praised the performance of the security forces who opened fire on the Palestinian drive and killed him as he rammed his car into a crowd of Zionist settlers in Jerusalem. "We are determined to continue fighting terrorism and to employ all its force to achieve this mission," Gentleman quoted Netanyahu as saying. The Fikler operations took place near a Zionist border police base located on the street separating East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem, occupation police said. The Zionist spokesman Lupa Samri said the driver has left the car following the attack and appeared to be holding a knife, at which point police fired at him again. The driver suffered major wounds and was transferred to a hospital where he remains in custody. The past few weeks and months saw an uptick in violence in the occupied Palestinian territories that led several deaths and injuries in both sides. Several Zionists were killed or wounded amid the rise in Palestinian attacks on the Zionists as the tension in the region mounts. Occupation forces, meanwhile, have continued their attacks on the Palestinians and their lands in the occupied territories, also leaving several dead or wounded. The foreign ministers of Russia and Germany urged the European security watchdog OSCE to make a swift decision on prolonging the mandate of its observers mission in Ukraine. In a phone conversation, Sergei Lavrov emphasized the need to continue and intensify efforts of the OSCE special monitoring mission to Ukraine. The Russian foreign minister said the ministers called for a quick decision by the OSCE Permanent Council on extending the mandate and expanding the number of monitoring to 1,000. Expelled members of Jordan's Muslim Brotherhood on Friday announced the appointment of Abdelmajid Zentab as the group's new general guard following the group states. A new executive Peru for the group has been formed, Zentab said at the press conference in a band that saw the attendance of several former Brotherhood members who was previously expelled from the group. The executive Peru is now the legal representative of a Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan after the group had its status legalized and ended to the mother organization in Egypt, which has been designated a terrorist group by the Egyptian government, Zentab said. An agreement was reached by several group members to name a new general guard who will pay me, Zainab added. On Tuesday, Jordan's Minister of Social Development approved resignation of the Muslim Brotherhood group under the provisions of the country NGO law. The Brotherhood's current leadership, meanwhile, maintains that the group doesn't require legalization since it has been registered since 1953 and asserting dismissed by the government. Zentab said the legalization move was meant to protect the group by setting it on firm ground legally, politically, and administratively. Rifts have emerged within Jordan's Muslim Brotherhood since 2014, when a number of senior group members joined an initiative with the other Jordan political forces without the permission of the group's leadership. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Inas Ahmed. Good night.